been about 1 year since I made the Wicker Devil, a game where you try to collect wood for your cabin fire so you don't freeze to death, while a bloodthirsty deer creature is trying to eat you. The challenge was to make the game in 24 hours, which I ultimately failed, taking 25 hours to complete it instead. I released the game anyway, and as I went on to live my new life as a scam artist, you guys actually showed the game a lot of love and support. So I thought, what if I did remake the game, but actually good this time? Because honestly, the original was something I wasn't completely in love with. In the original version of the game, you had a cabin in the woods with about a 10-meter radius to walk around in before you froze to death or got caught by the Wicker Devil. The new map has been expanded a ton to include multiple new areas for different moments and story beats throughout the game, which splits it up nicely into a bunch of little segments. But I'm mainly going to be covering the part of the game that's based on the original, so I don't spoil too many things. We also redesigned the cabin, although you'll see it's still incomplete. The new setting of the game is built to be a fictitious national park, and the first absolute must for us was to have a mascot as a Smokey the Bear spoof. But instead of a bear that warns about wildfires, it's an owl that warns about wildlife. Here's the sketch I made when I originally had that idea. So, as always, when I need some kind of art done for my games, I went to my professional artist of a sister to exploit her for free labor. She made a couple of concepts, I made a bunch of requests for revisions, which completely ruined it, and we went back to the original concept and ended up with this guy. We still haven't named him yet, we're trying to think of something kind of punny like Smokey the Bear is, so if you guys have any ideas, drop them in the comments. We put together a few different versions of him to populate around the map. I made an old dirty wooden cutout in Blender, and Substance Painter Maeve designed a stamp, and we're currently designing his friendly safety message for all the campers who are coming by. While Maeve was working on the owl, my good friend and buddy Tyler designed a national park logo, which came out looking which I actually love so much, I printed it out as a sticker and slapped it on my water bottle. You can only buy stickers in a pack, so it cost me like 20 freaking bucks. I started putting together the map, some of which uses assets I own from the original game, some I made myself in Blender, and some are mega scans. And some I even 3D scanned myself, which is something I'd never done before this project. I saw that my mom had these really cool owl statuettes, and I thought they'd look perfect inside of the cabin. After scanning them, I had to bring them into a retopology software to produce a low poly version of them, and then bake the texture from the high poly into the low poly. It took a couple of tries, but once I got it, I added in some extra detail with a normal and roughness map and fixed up the texture and affinity photo, sharpening it up and getting rid of a small dead area. I did that for 3 owls and the result looked really cool. And you'll probably see many times throughout this video that the environment is still very unfinished, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because there's this super famous proverb I'm always hearing, Shawkat hates environment. But what's a national park without a ranger? Meet Elijah, the protagonist for our story. He's made from a metahuman, who I sliced the arms off of, replaced the hands with some warm winter gloves, and thickened his arms to become flannel sleeves, and gave him plenty of animations. Hey, I don't appreciate your tone, mister. Stop crying. See, it's funny because I animated him. Whoa! See, it's funny. Also, if you're a regular follower of my channel, you might be asking what happened to my main project, Nightly Routine. Well, after some talking and some contemplating, we made the difficult decision to put Nightly Routine aside for later, because Wicker Devil will be a much faster project to complete. Okay, no more of that cutesy-wootsy stuff. Now let's get back to the real video games. The game begins with Elijah rolling up to his new job as a national park ranger when his supervisor suddenly is nowhere to be found. The story that ensues requires a lot of brand new mechanics to support what hopefully will become an immersive, interactive, and very stressful experience. I created a physics interaction system for better cohesion of the player into the world, as well as environmental puzzles. I created a note system to support the story, and also, if you hold the note up to a light, it shines through the paper. Pretty cool, right? Pretty professional, you'd say, huh? Pretty, triple A. Some other mechanics actually pushed me to do some more things I had never once done before for a video game. For example, at one point, Elijah's going to be holding a torch, but I couldn't find a good resource online for a torch particle effect that I was satisfied with, so we decided to actually build a torch in real life to use in the game. The plan was to build the torch out of a wooden handle and using cotton socks as the fuel, spray it with alcohol, and fill the ignited socks for a short while they burned out. We purchased only the absolute essentials, as well as kind of MacGyvering a stand to hold the torch upright. We waited until nightfall and soaked the socks with alcohol. And since alcohol burns clear, I kept breaking to wash my hands because I was kind of scared of setting my hands on fire. I was extra careful inserting the torch into the stand we built to make sure nothing was going to drip on my hands because I was a bit scared of that. We set my phone up on a tripod and filmed it on maximum quality settings to then transfer the frames onto a sprite sheet, which I could then use as a particle effect for the game. It could use a little improvement still, but I'm really proud of it and I'm happy to see that our hard work paid off. Also, I feel like I'm obliged to say don't make a homemade torch at home unless you are or have an adult and know what you're doing. We did a lot of research and had many safety checks and were incredibly responsible about the entire event. But Elijah isn't the only character that exists in the magical, mystical world of the northern Midwest, so we turned to metahumans. Metahumans are obviously an incredibly invaluable resource because you get an insanely high quality, fully rigged mesh, and we took it just a little bit further by retexturing them in Substance Painter to get a better fit for the setting of our game. But then there was the question of animation. Full body animation is multitudes harder than hand animating first person arms, so I went on to attempt motion capture. Unfortunately, motion capture suits can go for about $2,500, and I simply do not have that kind of bean. But I was lucky to find that the same company I was looking at, Rococo, offers a free software that tries to analyze your videos and make animation off of that. A few attempts proved to me that I look like I haven't had a good night's sleep in about 15 years, and also the animation just really wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. One of the takes actually ended up being not that bad, but due to only having one camera, my phone, and a room that isn't quite big enough, I made the decision to go back to hand animating. It wasn't all for nothing though. I was able to use the good take as a really good reference while creating the scene. And despite me failing, it's honestly pretty impressive technology, and I'm glad I was still able to find a use for it. Maybe someday I can get a mocap suit, but before then, I'm gonna need some serious bean. And honestly, I can't think of any good ways to make any money. Anyway, I'd like to thank today's sponsor. You know those days where you're sitting around thinking, man, I want to make video games, but as far as I know, there's no way to learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and more at my disposal. Well, what if I said you're a big, dumb idiot? Because today's sponsor, Brilliant, does all of those things. Their learning platform is designed to be uniquely effective, with their first principles approach helping you build understanding from the ground up. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts, which is a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. Plus, all content from Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google. Brilliant helps build your critical thinking skills through problem solving instead of memorizing. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you'll also be becoming a better thinker. Brilliant's growing number of programming courses are a great way to build foundations and learn real-world applications. For example, turns out Python isn't just a giant snake, but a programming language that you can get familiar with and build programs with on day one with Brilliant's built-in drag-and-drop editor. You'll learn essential coding elements from loops and variables to nesting and conditionals. Develop your mind to think like a programmer and begin writing complex programs to build games and apps. It's not a suggestion. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/shotcat or scan the QR code on screen, or you can click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. And now to get to what everybody's been waiting for, the spooks. The original Wicker Devil design is great, but it's in desperate need of an upgrade.
Hi, how are you?
So I opened Blender and I started sculpting.
First, an artist must concentrate and visualize his concept.
I wanted to keep it true to the original, but the original had some glaring issues that needed to be addressed. If you remember from the previous video when I make it, I just stretched a deer model around to get something I liked, which left me with really janky shoulders, broken noodly arms, a bad rig. So minus the head, I resculpted the model from scratch. I feel like I'm finally starting to get the hang of sculpting, putting together basic forms, and slowly whittling them away at different layers of detail to get a result I desired. So I gave him proper arms this time and changed his hooves to hands. I don't think I mentioned it in the last video, but I actually always wanted the original to have hands. I just knew it wouldn't be a possibility to do within the time limit. Since hands are notoriously hard to sculpt, I used tricks like actually downloading a free resource of hands and just pulling it around until I got something I wanted and sculpted off of that. I wanted to keep the head as close to the original as possible, but the topology was all messed up due to all the stretching and deforming I was just talking about. But man, I hate retopologizing. This is gonna take forever. Whoa! And there we have the final modeled version, ready and primed for texturing. I then created some fur in Blender to turn into a texture so that I could paint it onto the Wicker Devil, and I'm just gonna stop right here and say that you can't even tell by the end that I even did this. After working for hours to do that, I just kind of went with a different technique, because I don't think it ended up looking very good. But it was definitely super fun to do the mouth and the eyes and the hands as an addition to have that kind of creative freedom to add on to what the old Wicker Devil looked like. And to be completely honest, after all this work, I still don't feel 100% satisfied with it. I really can't get it out of my head that it feels inaccurate to the original in the way it's kind of missing that dead-eyed, hungry look in its face. So I think I'm gonna keep trying to improve it, and I'm definitely curious on your guys' thoughts as well. I was also super hyped to finally give it a proper rig. The last one was such a hassle to animate since it was made for a completely different kind of creature. But now that I can finally animate it properly, I can do stuff like this. Jokes like this are why my videos take like 3 weeks to make. Now that I have the new and improved Wicker Devil ready, it was time to recreate the original game loop. In the original, the Wicker Devil roamed around outside, chasing you when you joined him out in the cold and tried to crawl through the open windows. If he got inside, you would automatically get jump scared and lose the game. Now, instead of losing the game immediately when Mr. WD finishes his animation, the fight isn't over. He actually can come fully inside of the cabin now, which has been a challenge to design and animate since he barely even fits when standing upright. Now, you might be saying, Shawkat, what the heck are you supposed to do when he comes inside the cabin? Well, allow me to introduce the most requested feature of the original version of the game.
Yeah, boy.
Now you have a tool to defend yourself from getting chomped up, but it couldn't be too easy, so we had the cool idea of making the shotgun handling completely manual, meaning you have to insert each shell yourself, and since there's a very minimal HUD, there's no display of how many rounds you've put in, so keeping track of them can save you time. A lot of the mechanics were centered around interaction and having a minimal HUD, like the notes, and having full control over opening doors, and I wish I had more full-on gameplay to show, but everything is still very much a work in progress. I'm gonna be posting more updates on Twitter and Discord if you still want to keep up with it, and that Steam page is up right now, so wishlist that bad boy. Thank you. You're welcome. This whole thing has been an absolute ton of work. I'm recording this at 5:30 a.m.
Luigi, I'm so tired.
But I've been super hyped to finally be able to share it, and like I mentioned before, there's plenty of stuff for the game that I didn't mention in the video, but I'm hoping to get another video out with more content and a trailer and a release date and the whole shebang. So thanks for watching and stay tuned.